So let's begin with the first workshop, which is on community participation. And I'd invite Geoff Gallop back to the stage, and also Jeff Angel, who is the CEO of the Total Environment Centre. And we will begin with Geoff, our policy discussion today on the two big issues raised in the submissions. How do we engage the community? And how do we ensure that decision makers undertake the appropriate level of community participation? So Geoff, could I ask you to start off? You can use the microphone that you have on your chest there, just to talk about those ideas that you've teased out a little bit about how do you get the community involved.
Well, we've got a question here that's quite specific. It's dealing with the development of the sub-regional delivery plan. So the overall policies are in place, the growth plans for the regions, and now we're coming down to the sub-regional delivery, a very important part of our community in terms of the point that was made with one of the questions. Very distinctive sub-regions throughout New South Wales. They will have particular input that they'll want to make to the delivery of the broader policies and growth plans that are in place. So the key question results, how do we involve the community in that process? The Green Paper makes it clear that at that level, community participation needs to be very comprehensive. There needs to be a lot of input to the process so that we can lock down those plans with the notion that there's strong community support for them. The issue here, I think, is how do we go beyond the normal processes of representative government? I think representative government, of course, is based upon elections. We elect our members of parliament. They are then obliged under our legal principles to follow due process. Due process obliges them to consult in respect of the major issues that they face, but it doesn't necessarily oblige them to delegate or to pass over some of the decision-making process to the community. And so what we're talking about here is a sub-regional delivery plan. We need to go beyond the normal process. If we do that, how do we do it? Do we have a normal public meeting and we invite people along? And the point was made that people will obviously come with a very set position. Do we have set up a Royal Commission or something and appoint the best and the brightest to advise us on that process? And that's been a traditional methodology used in the planning arena. Or do we do something different? And the something different is, as I indicated in the answer to the question earlier, is to randomly select people. And certainly from my own experience in my local constituency, where the local government was randomly selecting groups to advise us on its planning, where we as a state government did that, we found it a very, very constructive process where people actually did take up the challenge of asking and seeking an answer to the question, what is the public interest? I know what my interest is. I know where I live. I know what I believe in. I know what I want to see. But let's just have a discussion about a broader question, rather like, if you like, that original social contract between individuals and government. So the first question on the agenda is, do you support the proposal for a randomly selected representative community panel? Think about that question in terms of what the alternatives may be, but when it comes to the sub-regional, do you think that should definitely be a component, yes or no?
And can I just get you to pause there, Geoff? Are there questions in the audience? Why don't we just tackle that question one at a time? Are there questions people have? Okay.
Lucy.
All right.
Yeah, Geoff, I just think we need to be really clear that the issue of random... Sorry, I'm Lucy Collins from Straight Talk, and I'm also representing IAP2.
Yeah.
The issue of random selection must not be seen on its own from the facilitation of this question of representing the common good. The idea is that you get randomly selected people in a room and that they represent their whole community. So the facilitation is not that you have people who come with their own position, but that you take them through a process where they're actually representing their entire community. And they're demographically matched. They are a mini public. It can only work if you have those both halves. And then it is, as Geoff says, powerful and successful.
It's good.
Terrific. Where was the next question?
I think there's also an issue for capacity building. So some people, randomly selected or not, have participated a lot in community forums and know how to get their point across. There is some element of capacity building for people who have not been in that process before you start.
I think a good community panel should certainly take on board the requirement and the obligation to educate people into the process. And that's one of the scientific issues, if you like, that needs to be addressed. And the assumption is, if you say you support that, I agree that would be incorporated into it.
The idea in the sub-regions often comes down to a state significant matter. At the moment, we know that state significant matters get a rails run, and we can point, say, to coal mines as one. A coal mine in New South Wales has never been knocked back. Never. Never, never, never. So state significant development is likely to have the most significant impact on the environment and communities and should require the greatest level of security. And that doesn't seem to be reflected in the Green Paper.
I thought the Green Paper did actually point to the need for widespread community participation in terms of major projects, as I recall from reading that paper.
Corinne Fisher from the Better Planning Network. Look, I think random selection has merit, but it cannot be the only method that you use. So it should be one of a range of strategies. And I also think that we shouldn't dismiss the vital input that local community organisations, existing community organisations, can have into this planning system. Local community organisations are actually, make up, are an important component of the fabric of local communities. Some of these organisations have been around for a very long time, and they know their communities, as well as local government. Thank you.
I mean, there are two types of community panel. One type is totally randomly selected. Another type is you might have a mixture of elements, some appointed, some self-selected who are involved in communities, and a group who are randomly selected. I suppose the question that, as I read this, is it's a threshold question. Do you think it's a good thing that we have random selection as part of the process of developing community engagement at the sub-regional level? But there are different ways in which you can participate, get people to participate, that's true. There are different forms under which random selection can work, that's also true. But it is a threshold question. A lot of people do say, when they talk about this issue, look, I'm all for going beyond representative democracy, but how do you do it in a way that can satisfy me that those that are involved are really representative?
All right. One final comment, I think, before we will need to vote.
As a lawyer and a mediator, I can say to you that I don't believe random selection will work.
Sorry, I didn't...
I don't believe it will work.
Right.
Simply because no matter how much you simplify the system, it's always going to be complicated because of procedural law. Now, in the eastern suburbs at Randwick City Council, we already have a system of precinct groups. And the precinct groups in the standard instrument LEP consultation were ignored. The only community groups who got up any view at all in that reflection in the LEP were the people who went to the media, the people who on a weekly basis got themselves on the front pages. So as far as Kensington goes, we've got huge issues as far as the environment goes and construction of high-rise buildings. None of that ever came about. We got a result where one person's view went in finally, and that was the Director of City Planning, a former Department of Planning officer.
Well, I think the question that the participants here might ask is if that is the case, is there a solution to that particular problem? And is that solution having some random selection in the process? Recall also what Van Lee said earlier about feedback. I mean, it's very, very important that people who participate know that in their participation they're going to make a difference. That might mean the government saying, whatever you decide, we will agree with. And that was the dialogue with the city. In Perth in 2003, we said to the participants, your decision will be our decision. And that gave them a lot of confidence in the process. So the question here is does the random selection break through that barrier that you've described so well, where we can't know that the people who are representing the community are representing the community, or whether they're just representing one interest? Not an unimportant interest, I take your point, but still an interest.
All right, we will need to vote, so can we have an indication of what people are feeling? Do you support the proposal for a randomly selected representative community panel, yes or no? Please enter your answer.
It's a tricky one because you've got to get the detail. It's a threshold question. This is a threshold type question. Can I use an analogy? The debate about whether Australia should be a republic, I apologise to those in the audience who mightn't think we should raise that. The view is, well, let's have a threshold decision, should we go that way, and then the next process will be to determine how to do it. This is a threshold question. That's how I read it.
Well, unfortunately, the question is the question.
Yeah.
So if you feel that you can't support it in the words that are there, then vote no. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we will have to... I hear you. I will come to you, sir, but I will ask you to vote now. We have 10 seconds to vote on that question. If you don't support it the way it's written, there we go. We have the answers. Yes, we support it. 70%, no, we don't. I didn't realise you'd already done it. Well done.
Quite interesting, isn't it?
That wasn't hard, was it?
You see, when you get to detail, it's...
We do... All right. We have so many questions to get through, and we do just want a flavour from 400 people to so many of these questions. If you feel you can't support the wording or you would like it reworded, then unfortunately we don't have the capacity to do that. So vote it down if you can't support it in the words that you see on the screen. They've been carefully selected. Let's just hear from the Minister for one moment.
Oh, I love the energy in this room. That's good.
Pretty good.
Can I just say?
Always,
I just want to clarify this because
can defeat the purpose.
I actually, when I look at that question, I understand what the community group representatives were actually saying, and in a sense, your opportunity to actually highlight the inconsistencies is part, or the inconsistency that may come. I think what we're on here in New South Wales at the moment is a massive learning curve. When we're over in Vancouver, they've had 20 years doing this. We haven't. And what we're trying to do here is really incredibly novel. I mean, 450 people, you saw the range of people. So forgive us if it's not absolutely perfect today. I promise you, as I keep reminding my wife, I recognise I'm not perfect. But I am keen to actually, if there are issues, and you made the point, as the lady over here did, that there may be some questions that come up from time to time that aren't absolutely perfect, just make that point. And then do your best on the basis of that question. And I promise you, it's not locked and loaded. This is about educating us about where we're heading. So the whole thing is a really exciting attempt. It won't be perfect. If it were perfect, we wouldn't have a problem. So let's just keep going as we're doing, and thank you for highlighting. Yeah. Can someone give this lady a microphone, please, so that we all know what she's wanted to say? Hang on 2 seconds to get a mic, because I really want to hear what you're saying.
I just wanted to say it was very interesting that it was a 7% on community. Every one of you live in a neighbourhood. You might be working for someone, and you might be here because you've been supported to get here by whatever train or bus or plane or whatever, but each of you live in a suburb, and all you're trying to do is pay your house off, have a better lifestyle, and raise your kids to be educated to live in a better Australia. That's one. Number two, the comments on minority groups is derogatory, and I understand the man up the back who said it. That's a catch cry across the state. So that's a statement. People sidestep community at the moment simply because they're so professionally informed. Now, I know Sam, I know Chris Johnson, and I have been following planning mechanism and planning instrument, and I'm just an ordinary person off the street for about 8 years. So if you think you can just do random And I understand that, Brad. It's not going to work. You're going to have to find the cultural mechanism to connect.
Can I say, look, I think we've moved past that.
No, we haven't moved past it. The energy of the room moved.
No, listen to what I'm saying, because I don't think that there's any way that it can just be random. I think the point that's being made is that, and it was made quite well, that if you're going to have a selection process for whatever the panels end up doing, there needs to be some way of addressing the community involvement, those community groups who have really a passion and ownership for areas, but also, I think the 70% would say we also need the random aspect as well. That's okay. But look, don't worry about that now, and let's not get obsessed with, if you like, the things that will stop us. Let's try and work out the things that combine us, but also raise them as you go. Don't hesitate to say it, because I'm genuine, this is a community, we're going to own this together. We really do. Not now, all right? No, you can say it in a bit. Okay, back to Ellen, because she's...
People are going to
all right, one quick one.
So why don't we just say...
I'll create the capacity.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
The concern is that you're going to take this data and then do a press release that 70% of this consultation actually supports random real...
No, I wouldn't, because that would defeat what I'm trying to achieve. Relax. 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 That's not what I'm trying to achieve, seriously. So thank you again. Now just let's find what joins us and the goodwill that's in the room and go forward, not let the small things that won't be perfect yet, because we're on this learning path, pull us back, okay? Forward. Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, why don't we use the technology within the device, as I indicated to you. You can make comments. So why don't I reserve time at the end of each workshop and you can make comments about your reservations about the question, your reservations about the system, or additional things that you want to include. All right? So we'll do that at the end of this and each workshop. So we will run into the same problem again here, but hopefully we have something of a solution. Yes. The Minister's just saying, when you look at the questions, and we'll put the next question on the screen if we can, and use this as an example, which of these... Paul, I'll just check that. Paul, if we have abstentions, can we count who doesn't vote? Well, I think we want everybody to vote, don't we? All right, tell you what we'll do. Let's have the question on the screen. The 7 criteria... Oh.
Thank you very much, Adam. So for the moment, though, let's just say this is a good effort to try and get community involvement, do the best answer, and that's the qualification, that we understand that it may not be perfect. It's not trying everybody into, you will do this because of it. It's just the best we can do today in this learning process. All right. And I'm sure if David Shearidge were here, he'd agree with me, hopefully.
So maybe not. We'll try and give our best answer to this next question with the opportunity to comment afterwards. So, Geoff, I'll ask you to talk to it. Which of these 7 criteria do you think are critical to the success of a community panel? If you can talk through those options, and then we'll vote, and there'll be time for comments after that.
Well, obviously, if there's going to be a community panel, part of the process of delivering and developing, I should say, the sub-regional delivery plans, we need to know what it is that you think's important about that panel. Now, there's 7 different criteria here. There's no doubt that will not fully incorporate the views of everyone in the room. So if you think there are other things that are crucial, there should be a process by which you can get those ideas through, texting or perhaps
yes,
even
we can use this
following
device
up.
At the end. So the 7 criteria?
The 7 quickly are, the panel is established early. And so if you're going to have a strategic plan, you're going to get in early. You're not going to leave it until well down the track. Secondly, this allows people who have doubts about the random selection to say so by not voting for the second point. Panel is a randomly selected group to ensure its representativeness. Thirdly, the panel is given a predetermined level of authority. One of the important issues with community panels is that the people who get involved need to know they're going to be listened to. Very important. And as I said, many panels actually are set up with the decision-making power by the executive arm of government. It's paid a sitting fee. Do you think that's important, or would people be willing to do this gratis? I think in the recent examples in local government in New South Wales, I think there were small payments made for participation. The panel encourages broad community participation. Now, this is very important. That ideas will be put to the panel, obviously. Those ideas will be coming from all sorts of areas, from the professionals, from communities. How important it is that that panel opens itself up to ideas. The panel is provided access to all information, absolutely crucial to the process. And finally, the panel determines the time it needs to complete its advice on the sub-regional delivery plan.
No, it's fine. It's fine, sir. It's fine.
Okay, so they're the 7 options. If you think there's something missing, by all accounts, you get that into the system.
And you can indicate that you support one or all 7 of those proposals. And so if we could have your vote now, you can support one or all 7 of them. And if you have a different idea, time will be made to allow you to do that. So please vote.
It's the voting bit that's fascinating, because whenever you get a vote, it's what you're voting on that matters. That's why referendum are very good, because they're so absolutely clear. You know, you can't amend them.
How are we going there, Paul? Perhaps we'll give another 30 seconds. You can indicate that you support 1, 2, all 7, however many you like. Another 15 seconds. Maybe a little bit longer. Some people are still leaning over the... All right, let's see those results now, Paul. That's good. All right, we have answers there. Paul, can I now invite people, you can open up the system now that those answers are there. If you would like to use your keypad to write in any other comments that you have about questions 1 or 2, please feel free to do so as we hear the next presentation. And when you have finished, you just hit the green key. Your little device should be ready to go, ready to receive your comments now. So while you do that, I'll invite Geoff Angel up. I'd have to, given that people could vote for more than one thing, my mathematics would suggest that that's not accurate, no. I shall get one for you at the end of the session. How about that? All right, Geoff Angel, if we could come to you from the Total Environment Centre. You've been a great champion of this idea of the Public Participation Charter and the inclusion of that. Can you just give us a sense of why you think that's important and what are the issues at play around that? Thanks.
Thanks. This is certainly an interesting process. So why do we need a public participation charter and improved participation systems? I'm just going to talk in bullet points because clearly you need some time to think about it and vote. Our society is complex with diverse and legitimate interests that need to be given an opportunity to articulate, advocate, interrogate, and with the prospect of negotiation on a level playing field in a timely, accessible, informed and well-resourced manner. Over the years, public participation via the planning system has been whittled away and cynicism has become rampant. The community needs to be re-engaged in the planning system and its confidence in it recreated. Participation can be messy and creative. It can't be reduced to a focus group or even slick professionalism. We do have to recognise that governments have to make decisions, and participation is not a recipe for paralysis. Finally, in regard to the first question, it's not optional to have a public participation charter, but it's a fundamental part of the planning system, receiving core legal protection in the Act, setting basic quality benchmarks and obligations on decision makers. We haven't had anything like this before. You all know the current Act, and there's simply a vague reference to public consultation. And when the thing comes up on the screen, you'll see the range of principles in the Charter, which I'd say are self-explanatory, and you can talk it through or ask questions.
All right, could we have those on the screen now? All right, there's a simple question to begin with about whether you support a community participation charter. Does anyone feel they need more information to be able to answer that question? Anyone have a question that they... We might hear from someone we haven't heard from, just if you use a big voice. Yeah. I guess you're concerned. Why don't you say it and I'll translate?
We talked about authenticity before,
yeah.
And I guess re-engaging the community. The process here is we have 400 people in the room, I guess, and the Minister has really eloquently said how much he wants to do this as a genuine process. I'm a bit cynical because we've only got 7% community participation in this room, and so every time we vote and every time we do everything, we are not going to have a voice. So how do we actually re-engage the community if we don't actually have the community in the room, and those that came fought hard and tough to get actually into the room? So from that perspective, I wonder, what is this process about?
All right,
I really would like to see the Minister honour his commitment, but I don't think it's working at the moment.
All right, I think that's an important issue to answer. Let's hear, Geoff, do you want to answer that, or would the Minister like to answer that one?
I think I prefer the Minister.
I mean, Geoff has been involved in the idea. Yes, indeed.
Can I just say, I mean, look, I understand that issue, and I've been around a long while in public life. What we are trying to achieve here is groundbreaking. It doesn't, as I said earlier, I don't think it's perfect. And I was just talking to Malcolm Ryan from Warringah Council, who's just pointing out that some of the shortcomings in this process, where you have the yes/no answers and not, a more open-ended opportunity. Although, as you just heard Ellen said, you do have an opportunity to highlight at the end of it with your pad some of the questions. I don't profess to say this is a perfect process. This is a start at what we do. It's interesting, Malcolm was just pointing out to me that in one sense, and it goes to the issue, we're talking about the importance of getting random selection, and yet this process today has been self-selection. As you just said, you fought to get to the group. There are others from development areas, local government, who also, because there's a limited number, you can see we had some problems. So in one sense, this is not going to be perfect. Can I just say to you again, though, except that what we are trying to do here is to achieve something which has never been done before. It isn't perfect. It is not. It will not be perfect yet. It may never be perfect, for heaven's sake, but we're doing what we can. So just ride with it today. It's not going to be black and white definitive. This is absolutely it. There'll be lots more community consultation. There's a white paper coming. There's more consultation after that. There'll be another forum. Just relax. Do what you can today, please, and help us get where we need to get. If we, in a sense, can I say this too? What worries me, and I had the lady who's working with David Shoebridge. David and I had a bit of a tussle the other day in estimates. I think that we've got to put aside our political concerns and our immediate concerns and try and say, This is about trying to bring everybody together, try and move forward, but it's not perfect. We will see where we get to, but there's lots more opportunities to make it work. It's interesting, because when we went to New York last week, we found that they were telling us from a distance that they had these panels, community panels. And what we found when we got there was that they were appointed panels by politicians. I am very aware of those sorts of issues. I am here to listen and take on board all these concerns. I haven't come in for 5 minutes and ducked out. I'm here for the whole thing, as I have been for every other forum. I promise you, just treat it as best you can. Try and put away your understandable angst. I think as Van Lee said earlier, there's been a long period where people haven't been listened to. We are trying to make sure that that changes, but just give us a go and just stick with it today. And again, I thank you for actually taking part. But thank you. Thank you very much, Ellen. Thank you.
I personally feel much more relaxed. Why don't we go ahead and try and answer that question? Do you support a community participation charter? Just yes or no, your best answer to that. Terrific. And if we could put the next question, Paul, onto the screen so that there's overwhelming support for that. Now, the next question is interesting, and Geoff, if you could speak to it. Do you think the legislation should require a community participation plan? What do you need to know to answer this question?
Yes, can I just make a comment on just that previous debate? Quite clearly, people are justifiably cynical over many, almost decades of disenfranchisement. But we don't have any choice but to invest as much as we can in making this new system better. Otherwise, frankly, we're left with what we've got. Now, I guess I'm an inveterate optimist, but I have never seen a minister engage so directly, so often, at these sorts of meetings with people and from a range of stakeholder groups. So it's worth putting some time and energy into this and perhaps putting aside the cynicism. It can come back. Cynicism is easy. And just see where this gets to. So to the next question. Next question is...
Yes, you can see it on the screen here.
Do you think the legislation... That. Obviously, over the years, the participation rights have been whittled away, first to regulations, then to guidelines, and it's quite clear that in order to reassert, to re-inject public confidence in the system, these rights have to be a central part of legislation.
And so what happens if you leave them out? I mean, how prescriptive is it if you put it in the legislation? What's the significance of putting it in the legislation?
Certainly our view is that it needs to be more than just a vague 3-word reference. We need to set some basic benchmarks for the quality of public participation, and there are a range of particular benchmarks which aren't optional, so that when community participation is undertaken or a community participation plan is produced, you're actually measuring it against whether there is a capacity for partnership, whether it's inclusive, whether there is early involvement, whether there is transparency and accessibility. Now, all the methods to do that are clearly varied and will be appropriately directed or delivered for certain levels of planning and their complexity, the range of people that are affected both geographically and in terms of stakeholder interests. But unless we have those levels of standard or outcomes, then we're just going to get a whole mishmash of good plans, bad plans and complete crap plans.
And does this, is what's proposed, does it build in accountability?
There are a couple of additional elements which build in accountability. The first is that the decision maker, whether it's the Department of Planning or local councils or in fact the sub-regional planning bodies, that they produce a community participation plan that explains how they're going to implement those various principles. Clearly, that should be subject to public consultation. And secondly, that annually, each year, the effectiveness of that plan is independently reviewed, not by the actual deliverers of the plan or the consultants, and that sets the basis for improvement and injecting some greater confidence in the community that this sort of process is being taken seriously.